Dear Maya, 10 years ago today, your mother and I drove to the hospital, and the staff admitted us into the labor and delivery ward. At 7 o'clock that evening, your mother requested an epidural, and the great anesthesiologist, Brian Halverson, who doubles as a barista from time to time, placed the epidural and instilled the anesthetic. A handful of hours later, the medical team broke Kimmy's water, and then at 4:01 a.m. on December 24, you burst into the world as a 6-pound and 12-ounce newborn. Instantaneously, Kimmy and Craig became mom and dad, and the young married couple just down the road transformed into a family of 3. Because your birth occurred on the eve of Christmas, we received a stocking as a gift from the hospital, and we gently placed you inside. When I took this video, I remember thinking, Christmas is never going to be the same again. And I was right. Christmas has not been the same since you arrived. Instead, Christmas has only gotten better. After all, we now have several Christmas traditions in our family, which are the direct result of the proximity of your birth to Christmas Day. One of these traditions is to take a picture of you on December 24 every year with this same stocking. While one may dismiss this tradition as inconsequential, this tradition fills my heart with a profound gratitude for our lives, because placing these pictures side by side reminds me that I am the recipient of an extraordinary gift, the gift of being your father. Another tradition that is a bit more conventional as far as birthdays go, but unconventional as far as Christmas traditions go, is that our family sings Happy Birthday to You every year on Christmas Eve.
To you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Maya. Happy birthday to you.
Blow it out. Hey, blow it out, Maya. Maya, blow it out. Blow.
Blow it out.
More.
With purpose.
You want Levi to help you? Okay, I'll help.
Put him in the game.
Help.
And tomorrow, we are going to sing Happy Birthday to You for the 10th time, which means that when I look back at these pictures from your first week of life, I am now looking at photographs that are a decade old. While the concept of a decade can sometimes feel abstract, the weight of the decade becomes tangible whenever we recreate these old photos today. You look like you've aged 10 years since the time that first photo was taken, and I look like I've aged 20. The space between these pictures are filled with so many beautiful and happy memories, and these memories extend far beyond just our relationship. At this year's turkey trot, I took a picture of you with your friend Noelle, and while this was unintentional, this image was a near perfect recreation of a picture from your second birthday. And this second picture will turn 8 years old tomorrow. Also, whenever I see you around church, you always seem to have Griffin Cattenhorn in your arms. This is a bit of a surreal moment for me because just a few days after you were born, we took a picture of you with his mother, Maddie. And because you love Griffin so much, you always have a perfect smile when you hold him. You do not want any pictures to be ruined when you take a picture with Griffin. This is very different than when you take pictures with your friend, Sarah. But in your defense, Maya, you two have been taking pictures together for a very long time. You two love to make each other laugh, so you keep coming up with the strangest facial contortions in an attempt to make the other giggle. Finding a serious picture of you two is nearly impossible. And one of my favorite videos from this year is when Sarah and you told us a story. In this story, you two rode in the backseat of a car when your car was suddenly passed by another car filled with Catholic nuns.
He pulled in the car, so I just glanced over because why not? So I'm like, and then I saw. He's taking a video.
Tell the story.
Tell the story.
Tell the story.
Okay, so you'll be famous. We're just driving along. Like, oh my god. I glanced over and then I came back and I'm like, then I looked over again and I saw these nuns driving in my car. And they're like pretty good drivers. There were like 6 of them or something.
Nuns?
Yeah.
Oh.
And they were like, since when can nuns drive? They're pretty good drivers. I know. They were in the lanes perfectly.
Haven't you seen The Sound of Music?
Yeah.
They know how to cut, the chords, the right chords to make sure the cars don't work. Remember that?
Nope.
Well, it's kind of a big part of the movie.
When can you show?
Being a decade old means that you started the 4th grade this year, and I've never been the parent of a 4th grader before. But I discovered that 4th grade marks an exponential increase in the language and slang you bring home with you from school. You no longer say, I love it. Instead, you say, I lurve it. When you're inspired, you say, slay. When you're uninspired, you say, meh. And then you found out you can push all of my buttons at once by responding to any question I ask with the vague answer of stuff. Oh, Maya, I hate this word, and you know it. Unfortunately, we captured this annoyance on camera while I was attempting to record a nice video of your brother and his cousin, Jake.
Stuff.
Now, if anyone feels bad for me, which I don't think anyone does, I want to assure you that I gladly return the favor, because while you, Maya, can push all of my buttons, I know I can be your father, which embarrasses you. All I have to do is record videos of you trick-or-treating with your friends.
Thank you.
Why do you keep doing this? A million videos of everything.
I took 2.
I got one. Lie! Yeah, you gotta stop.
But even though there are annoyances and embarrassments, I love being your dad, and I love you, Maya. Happy birthday. While I did not mention it before, one last Christmas and birthday tradition in our family is this one. While we did not start this tradition until your 2nd birthday, I now write a letter to you every year as December 24 approaches. In this letter, I wish you a happy birthday. I reminisce over the year we just shared. I verbalize the hope we hold for the year to come. And of course, I talk about the Christmas story and what this narrative means for our lives today. And so to talk about the Christmas story this year, I want to tell a story about you and a $142 million piece of art. And this story begins with the drums. A little over 4.5 years ago, your mother and I told you that we were going to put you into piano lessons. No, you immediately replied. This defiant reaction surprised us. When we asked why you didn't want to take piano lessons, without hesitation, you responded, because I want to play the drums. And because of that bold declaration from 5-year-old Maya and a lot of hours of practice, I can officially say that I am now, quote, living my best life. Because when Paradox Kids announced a family variety show this year, I turned and asked if you wanted to cover the White Stripes with me, and you enthusiastically responded, yes.
So what? Somebody like you in a rock wants to be the one who's in control. But the feeling that you're under can only make you wonder how the hell she can be so cold.
And then my best life somehow got even better when your brother took up the bass. And just last week, the 3 of us played in the band together at Paradox. What a gift to be able to play with both of you in a band, along with Maddie, Eric, Elin, Brandon, Jeremy, and Andrew, who are all incredible musicians. This is quite literally a dream come true. And then just when I think this dream cannot become any dreamier, there was a moment that your brother and you shared when we played O Come, Emmanuel together on stage shortly after you stop playing.
And open wide our make safe the way that leads on.
While this set was special because your brother played in the band for the first time, it also represented something much larger. Because at the beginning of the year, you set a goal to play drums 6 times at Paradox Church in 2023. You impressed me with your ambitious goal, and as an incentive, I told you that if you met your goal, I would take you anywhere you wanted within driving distance for a full day with Dad. And last weekend, you did just that. You played for the 6th time in 2023 at Paradox. After you played 5 times and it was apparent that your 6th time would happen in the future, I asked what you wanted to do for your special day. Daddy, you said, I want you to take me to Beverly Hills so that you and me and my doll Joss can all go together to the American Girl doll store. So a few days later, we hopped in the car. You buckled yourself in your booster seat, and then you buckled Joss into her booster seat, and we set off for Beverly Hills. About 2 hours later, we arrived at American Girl, and you were filled with unbridled wonder. All of the toys in your well-worn catalogs back home were here, including the American Girl Airlines flight set, the American Girl teardrop trailer, and the American Girl Hogwarts Express. We browsed the displays and products for nearly an hour until the time arrived for our sacred reservation for 2 at the American Girl Cafe. You walked inside with palpable excitement. You pointed out every detail to me, worried that I might miss something. And then you squealed with delight when you saw a designated seat at our table for Joss. When the waitress brought a Diet Coke for me and an apple juice for you, she also brought a cup and saucer for Joss, which you filled with your apple juice. And as each course of food arrived, you fed Joss and asked her how she liked her food. While I took pictures of you and asked how you were enjoying everything, you didn't want me to feel left out. So you took pictures of me chilling in the American Girl Cafe. And when you asked how I was enjoying everything, I said, I'm having the best time, Maya. I love the company of Joss and you. And I think it's great that the American Girl Cafe has a cocktail menu for the parents who've had a rough morning. For your main course, you ordered mac and cheese, and the meal was topped off with the cafe's signature chocolate mousse flower pot dusted with Oreo cookie crumbles. After soaking it all in, you paid the American Girl Cafe the highest compliment your 9-year-old brain could muster when you said, "This place is like a pink Panera Bread." As we finished our elegant cuisine at Pink Panera Bread, I listed several experiences you could choose from for the rest of our day in Los Angeles. To my surprise, from all of those options, you selected the Getty Art Museum. When we arrived, you flew through the exhibits. Apparently, being 9 years old means you can't look at a work of art for more than 9 seconds. I slowed you down by asking you to mimic some of the art and also asking you to react to a giant pin sticking out of a large depiction of a bug. You nearly sprinted through the immaculately manicured gardens. That is, until I showed you a picture from May 30, 2009, which was a picture taken at the Getty Gardens from my second date with your mother. I suggested you and I should recreate this photo 14 and a half years later, and I think we nailed it. But of course, the crown jewel of any visit to the Getty is the upper level of the West Pavilion, which contains masterworks from the finest Impressionist artists in the world. This room includes Vincent van Gogh's painting, Irises. Now, this painting is fascinating for many reasons. One of these reasons is the public does not know how much the Getty Museum paid to acquire it. What we do know is that in 1987, an Australian named Alan Bond won this painting at an auction for the price of $53.9 million American dollars. To this day, This is still the highest price ever paid for any work of art at one auction. However, there was a slight problem with this winning bid. Alan Bond did not have $53.9 million. So the Getty swooped in and paid an undisclosed amount to secure the painting as part of its collection. Nearly every art historian assumes the Getty paid at least $53.9 million, but there are some who estimate they paid as much as $80 million. In an effort to avoid sensationalism, let's assume the lowest estimate is correct. If we adjust for inflation from 1987, then the Getty paid the equivalent of $142 million for this one painting in today's economy, which all led to both of us in November of 2023 standing in front of one of the most expensive paintings ever purchased, painted by one of the most influential artists in all of human history in a nationally lit room on top of the Santa Monica Hills in Los Angeles. I invited you to look closer at the painting. I pointed out how different the painting looked up close and how Van Gogh's paintings possess a dazzling texture. I described how the experience of a Van Gogh painting changes dramatically as one views it from afar and then walks closer to the canvas. You came in close, you listened to what I said, and then you uttered just one word: meh. You then turned your back to the painting and walked out of the room. In disbelief, I chased after you. I brought you back to the painting and then incorporated one of my favorite parental stall tactics. I asked you to take a picture of me. Then I asked if we could take a picture together. But after that last picture, you could not wait to leave the room. Now, you may change one day, Maya, but I think it's worth remembering this fact. When you were 9 years old, you gazed into the details of a $142 million masterpiece, and your reaction was sheer, undiluted indifference, all summed up in just one word: meh. Maya, I know you well, and I know you're not going to like what I'm going to say next, but I have to say it. This story reminds me of the Christmas story. 2,000 years ago, some shepherds lived on the other side of the earth in a land called Judea. Now, these shepherds will eventually make a brief appearance in Luke chapter 2 as supporting characters in the Christmas narrative. But before we rush ahead to their big moment in human history, it's worthwhile to remember that each of these shepherds had an entire life outside of the words in Luke's gospel. They all had names, they all had families, they all had most likely been shepherds for years or even decades before the first Christmas occurred. If we imagine the story solely from their perspective, then the story of Christmas takes on a whole new life. So let's tell the Christmas story in a way that makes these anonymous shepherds the main characters in the story. We will use the text as our foundation, and then our imagination will eventually form the scaffolding of this narrative. Now, we can begin by assuming that there are 3 shepherds, 2 male and 1 female. Let's just assume that their names are Nadab, Abihu, and Azubah. All of them are in their 20s. All of them have cared for sheep for nearly 10 years now, and all of them are really good friends, and all of them are competitive. They challenge each other constantly to trivial tasks and laugh as they constantly try to one-up each other. And so one evening, Nadab, Abihu, and Azubah are sitting on a hillside under a vast canopy of stars. Azubah picks up a rock, points to a tree stump about 15 feet away, and says confidently, "Hey guys, closest to the stump wins," and then cocks her arm back to throw. But Abihu interrupts her. "Wait! Azubah, is it the closest resting position of the rock thrown, or is it the closest initial impact of the rock thrown?" Nadab lets out a disgusted sigh. "Come on, Abihu, it's initial impact," he says. "We're trying to hit the stump with a great throw, not roll the rock up to the stump." "Exactly," Azubah says, and with that, she lets the rock fly. And everything instantly turns blindingly bright. "Ah!" they all scream and recoil as they throw their arms over their eyes. And then an unfamiliar but powerful voice begins to speak to them. "You have nothing to fear," it says. With great hesitation, Nadab, Abihu, and Azubah peek out of the narrowest gap they can make with their eyes, and surprise washes over them as they realize they are just a few feet away from what appears to be an angel. I came to proclaim good news to you, the angel says, news of a great joy to be shared with the whole people. Today in David's city, a Savior, the Messiah, has been born to you. Let this be a sign to you. You'll find an infant wrapped in a simple cloth lying in a manger. Azubah opens her mouth to ask a question, but before she can speak, the angel looks skyward, extends their wings, and rockets to the sky at breakneck speed. At that moment, Nadab, Abihu, and Azubah's jaws all drop because the sky is filled with a multitude of angels. Abihu tries to speak, but before the words come out, the legion of angels begins singing in full volume, "Glory to God in high heaven, and on earth peace to those on whom God's favor rests." These voices are so loud that Nadab, Abihu, and Azubah cannot hear themselves even think. The angels repeat this song 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. Each time the angels add new harmonies and instruments while always getting louder until, after the 5th repeat, the music suddenly stops, light flashes, and then the angels are gone. Dazed, confused, overwhelmed, and unsettled, Nadab, Abihu, and Azubah stare at each other in silence for several seconds. Each of them is trying to figure out if the other two saw and heard the supernatural intervention that had just personally experienced for themselves. Eventually, Azubah says, "Let's go straight to Bethlehem and see this event that God has made known to us." Nadab and Abihu cannot speak. They merely nod, and the 3 of them walk together in darkness. After 30 minutes of traveling, the 3 shepherds arrive at a stable with a man outside. Abihu approaches the man and says, "Excuse me, this might seem like a strange question, but was a baby just born here?" The man looks at Abihu with a perplexed expression on his face. "Yes," he says. "Why do you ask?" Nadab steps forward. "Well, you aren't going to believe this, but 1 billion angels just told us about it." Azubah also jumps in. "The angels told us to go and see this baby for ourselves, and we weren't about to tell those angels that we were too busy to go see this baby." The man laughs and then says, "Just a minute. Let me see if Mary is taking visitors." The man disappears inside, and several minutes later, reemerges with a smile on his face. "Come and see," he says. Nadab, Abihu, and Azubah stoop down low and step inside the stable. Sitting on the ground is an exhausted but triumphant woman, and next to her, wrapped in a simple cloth, lying in a manger, is a newborn baby, just like the angel told them. The boys begin to cry. Their emotions are flooded by the beauty of this infant. Through tears, they tell Mary the story of the first angel and the angel's bold predictions, and then the 1 billion angels and what it was like to hear all of them singing. They talk about how this baby has validated so much of what they trust to be true about the goodness of the world, and they smile and laugh as they recall memories of times they held babies for the first time for themselves. They stay for about 7 minutes before Mary politely says, "I'm so sorry, but I need some sleep." The 3 shepherds remember their place, and after stammering through several apologies, say their farewells and head back out into the night. As they walk back, Nadab shouts, "That was awesome! I can't believe it!" And Abihu cheers and exclaims, "This is the best day of my life, right, Azubah?" But Azubah can only say one word, and that word is, "Meh." Now, Nadab and Abihu stop dead in their tracks. "Excuse me?" they both say to Azubah. "I mean," she says, "it was good, but I kind of expected a little bit more." Stupefied, Nadab asks, "What do you mean you expected a little bit more?" And Azubah says, "Well, consider the hype leading up to this baby. We just had 1 billion angels singing about how this particular baby was going to change everything. So I expected a little bit more than a baby. And then we go and see the baby, and it's just a baby. And I don't mean any disrespect to this baby, but I mean, he seems like a nice baby, but I'm not sure why 1 billion angels had to tell us to go see this thing when it was so ordinary." "But Azubah," Nadab interjects, "Abihu and I were crying. We never cry, but this baby broke our hearts wide open. I'm never going to be the same after I've seen this baby. How can you possibly say meh to that?" Azubah rolls her eyes. "Nadab," she says, "I'm not saying meh to your experience. I absolutely believe you when you tell me that seeing this baby changed your life. And because I'm your friend, I'm really happy for you. But at the same time, this baby wasn't a life-changing experience for me. A bee who jumps in, oh, Azuba, couldn't you feel the same things we felt in our hearts when we saw the baby? And with compassion, Azuba responds, honestly, I felt more love in my heart when I held my younger brother for the first time. When a billion angels showed up to tell us about this baby, I expected to feel more love in my heart than that moment, but I didn't. So the whole experience was kind of meh for me. The boys stare in silence as Azuba bends down, picks up a rock, throws it, and together they all hear the satisfying thunk as the rock collides solidly with a tree stump. Maya, I tell you the Christmas story in this way because the multitudes of the angels in this story represent something tangible in our lives today. Their sudden appearance, bold proclamations, gargantuan numbers, and boisterous choruses are the ancient equivalent of a $142 million hype. When the Getty spends the equivalent of $142 million to purchase just one painting, they are hoping people will travel from all over the world to see this painting for themselves. And while I have no doubt that the majority of people who have seen this particular painting have felt a wave of emotion as they looked upon the canvas, I know of at least one person who walked right up to this painting, felt nothing, and so she said, meh. To you, this Van Gogh painting was just another painting in a building filled to the brim with paintings. In the same way, there are billions of human beings who have told and who have heard the story of Jesus Christ's birth. This story resides in humanity's collective consciousness with a massive amount of hype. And I know plenty of people who describe this story as life-changing. But I also know people who hear the story about the birth of Christ and all they feel inside is, meh. Now, you may assume that I'm talking about Christians and non-Christians, but I also know Christians who read the Gospel of Luke, and while they profess their love for the Christmas story, their behavior suggests they are indifferent to the birth of Christ. This became abundantly clear to me when I heard a story from my good friend Tyler, seen here at an 80s prom murder mystery party with me this year. Now, Tyler's an atheist, but he was raised in a Christian church in Montana. As he grew up, he attended the Christmas Eve service at his church every year. But when he started to identify as an atheist, he obviously had very little interest in participating in this service. However, the Christmas Eve church service meant a lot to his mother. So, every year, knowing full well that her son was an atheist, she asked Tyler to go with her to the Christmas Eve service at church. And because Tyler loved his mother, he went with her every year. Now, when Tyler told me this story, I remember asking him, what do you think of the Christmas Eve church service at your mom's church? And he said, oh, it's incredibly boring. Now, skeptical, I said to him, oh yeah? What makes it boring? And he said, Craig, the same pastor has been there for over 20 years. And every Christmas Eve, he gives the exact same sermon, word for word. We're all just going through the motions at this point. Maya, if I ever met this pastor, I have no doubt that he would tell me how much he loves the Christmas story. But his actions suggest that he does not feel this story has anything new to say about our present reality. In another word, his true feeling about the Christmas story is meh. I tell you all of this because in your life, you are going to meet people, both inside the Christian tradition and outside the Christian tradition, who are indifferent to the Christmas story. And the truth is, you may even find yourself feeling indifferent to the Christmas story yourself. And I want you to know that another's indifference or your indifference is okay. You do not need to like the Christmas story to win my approval or receive the love of God. I write this to you confidently today because after 15 years in ministry, I have tried to convince others to like the Christmas story, and I have found that work to be completely unfulfilling. Allow me to explain. When we saw the Van Gogh painting together in November, it was clear that you did not care one iota about this painting. I tried to convince you to like it, and I failed. In the end, you did not like the painting of Van Gogh. But this raises the question, does art exist for you to like it? Of course not. The reason art exists is inspiration. I love the definition of inspiration in the New Oxford American Dictionary. They define inspiration as the process of being mentally stimulated to do or feel something, especially to do something creative. So back in 1889, Vincent van Gogh walked through a field, saw a cluster of irises sticking up out of the dirt, and was so inspired by these random flowers that he did something about it. He procured canvas and colors and sat down and painted the irises. Van Gogh was too much of an unknown artist for him to be concerned with how many people would one day like or not like this painting. And so, whether you like the painting or not, what we all have to acknowledge is that Van Gogh did something, and that's the purpose of art. This applies directly to the Christmas story. We must always remember that the point of the Christmas story is not for you to like it. Rather, the point of the Christmas story is inspiration. This is a story not about how God needs your validation. It's not about how God comes down to earth and says, "Do you like this story?" No. This is a story about God doing something. And when I think about my understanding of God growing up, I remember thinking God was way out there, looking at me way down here in constant disappointment. It's almost like I thought God was on a sofa in heaven, watching my life as if it were a football game on TV, and yelling frequently at me for not being able to get it together. In this scenario, God is not a personal God. God is not a loving God. God is not a good God. But in our tradition, we have the Christmas story that challenges all of these notions. And in this story, the presence of God becomes tactile in the presence of a newborn baby. And suddenly, this God knows what it's like to need help from someone else. This God knows what it's like to disappoint someone else. This God knows what it's like to be loved perfectly by an imperfect mother. You see, Maya, the testimony of Christmas is this. God is an active participant in the human experience, not a detached critic in the sky. God does not whine and complain about our bad behavior from afar. Rather, God is here among us, empathizing with both the triumphs and the tragedies of what it means to be human. And whether we like the Christmas story or not is irrelevant. The real value of the story is found in the way it inspires us to become more loving people, to become more peaceful people, to become more compassionate people, to become people who welcome refugees, to become people who say, "I'm sorry," and also people who are quick to forgive, to become people who are kind to the earth and the animals we encounter, and to become people who are loving to ourselves. My hope is that when you read or hear the Christmas story, the question you will ask will not be one that is a consumer-driven question of, "Do I like this story?" Instead, I hope you ask the question, how is this story affirming that I am enough in God's eyes? Or another question, how is this story nudging me into greater love? Or another question, what is this story asking me to do that I've been afraid to get done? And if you find yourself indifferent to the Christmas story, then the question shifts to, that's okay. What other stories inspire you? Because your mother and I do not wish for you to like the Christmas story. Instead, we wish for you to feel like you are enough. We hope you find joy and happiness in this life. We want you to become a more empathetic person who cares about others. And we want you to love this beautiful planet, which our Creator has so generously given to us. And your mother and I have found inspiration in the Christmas story to do something about this and actively work toward those things. And this is why we share the Christmas story with you. But we never want you to confuse the means with the ends. This is my wish for you in Christmas and your birthday in 2023. Maya, I love you. Your mother loves you, and God loves you, no matter how inspired or uninspired you are by the Christmas story. You are beautiful, inside and out. And I love how the inspiration you hold has shaped you to become a generous and kind person. Thank you for all of the hugs, the kisses, the laughs, the buttons pressed, and the joy you have given me over the past decade. I cannot wait to see what this next year holds, because the last 10 have been an epic assortment of joy. I love being your father, and I love you. Love, Dad.